This wheat trial was developed by Kim Stonehouse with Saskatchewan Agriculture. The objective is to show the loss of production and economic risks associated with broadcast applications of nitrogen fertilizers on frozen or snow-covered soils in Saskatchewan.
Farmers may be tempted to broadcast N on snow due to time management constraints. So, to determine the risks, this trial was conducted at 7 AgriM locations in 2021 and is being conducted again this year in 2022.
ECRF and Parkland College have conducted similar studies in the past and found broadcast applications of urea on 10 centimeters of snow produced wheat which was 19 bushels per acre lower yielding with 1.2% less grain protein, compared to treatments which receive side banding of nitrogen at seeding. In other words, broadcasting urea on snow resulted in a lot of nitrogen loss, which wasn't reduced even when we used Super U. However, the use of Super U did reduce nitrogen losses and improve crop yields when applied in early or late fall, just not when we applied it to snow. However, no broadcast treatment of urea with or without Super U resulted in a comparable yield or grain protein relative to the side-banded check.
For the trials in this study, differences were not as dramatic in 2021 due to widespread drought and high residual levels of N. However, this year is looking more promising. Let's have a look at the results from both years.
Here's Kim's treatment list. The rate of nitrogen here is referred to as 1x because the rate differed between locations based on N requirements. However, within a location, each treatment received the same rate of nitrogen. The broadcast application timings were mid-November in green, early February in red, and early April in blue. At each timing, broadcast applications of bare urea, Super U, and Amvol were compared. Amvol has a urease inhibitor, which protects against volatilization losses of ammonia. Super U has a urease inhibitor and a nitrification inhibitor, which reduces the risk of nitrogen losses from denitrification and leaching. So all these broadcast applications of N were compared against the same rate of spring side-banded urea at seeding, which is treatment 10. Treatment 10 is the check, as N-use efficiency for spring-banded applications is best. It's the right place and the right time. Here are the yield results from 2021. There were no statistically significant yield differences between treatments at Prince Albert, Yorkton, Indian Head, and Melfort. Drought and high residual soil N would have affected the results at our site at Yorkton. It's hard to detect differences in N-use efficiency when your level of soil N is high, particularly during a drought. Likewise, rates of applied nitrogen were also high at Prince Albert and Melfort. In other words, losing a little N is not going to make a lot of difference to yield potential if there's more than enough N in the system. Despite the drought and extremely low yield potential at Swift Current, it was possible to detect some differences between treatments. However, numerically, the yield of the side-banded check was only the second highest yield. At Redvers and Outlook, side-banded urea produced significantly more yield than any other broadcast treatment, as expected. Redvers had a decent yield potential, and Outlook had a high yield potential as it was irrigated. Numerically, yields were highest for the side-banded nitrogen treatment at Indian Head as well. In 2022, Prince Albert, Yorkton, Melfort, and Redvers had no significant differences in grain yields between treatments. At Yorkton, this may have been the result of high residual soil N again, and in season, hail causing variability. Again, Prince Albert and Melfort had high rates of applied nitrogen, which may have masked nitrogen losses. At the remaining sites, where significant differences were detected, side-banded urea was once again the highest yielding treatment. While there was occasionally a trend for higher yields when products with urease inhibitors were used, differences were never statistically significant. In 2021, significant differences in grain protein between treatments were detected at all locations except Yorkton. Protein levels were extremely high at Yorkton, which just indicates how the residual level of soil N was excessive for the dry growing conditions. At all other sites, side-banded nitrogen produced the highest level of grain protein. In 2022, significant differences in grain protein were detected between treatments at all sites again, except Yorkton. What can I say? We were still working our way through high levels of soil nitrogen. Excepting Redvers, sites where significant differences were detected found side-banded nitrogen produce the highest level of grain protein. For some site years, broadcast applications in early February tended to produce the lowest grain protein. Similar to the yield data, treating with a urease inhibitor tended to increase grain protein, but differences were again statistically insignificant. An economic analysis was performed by averaging the data from all site years together. The cost comparison assumed a price of $10.80 per bushel of wheat and an additional cost of using Anvil of $128 per ton and for Super U $150 per ton relative to using straight urea. Every broadcast treatment resulted in a substantial economic loss compared to side-banding the urea at seeding. However, keep in mind that many of the sites had reduced yield potential due to drought or had high levels of nitrogen. As a result, the potential loss of nitrogen at these sites may not have affected yield because there was lots in the system. At sites that were highly responsive to added nitrogen, the loss in income from broadcasting urea was considerably higher. It would have been higher still if a protein premium was also considered in the economic analysis. So while broadcasting nitrogen on snow may save time, it comes with a large economic cost, and the use of a urease inhibitor under those conditions is not going to improve the economics. To be fair, our past work from Yorkton has found urease inhibitors can make economic sense, particularly when broadcasting urea in early fall on warm soils. It just doesn't seem to help much when broadcasting on snow. Thanks to the ministry's Strategic Field Program for funding this study.